So guys, let's get into Celpip listening. And I would like to state that Celpip listening is usually about 47 to 55 minutes long. It has 38 questions, 6 parts, and you'll be listening for different things. You'll be listening for problem solving. You'll also be listening to daily conversation, to information and news reports. You would also be listening to group discussion and also viewpoints, which is the last one. And I would like to state that these different listening, sometimes some of them, the earlier ones, are between 2 people, some are between 3 or more people, while some of them are monologue. So an important point of Celpip listening is that you can only play the audio once. You can't replay it and you can't go back to the previous question. So once you are done listening to the audio, that is it. So you need to pay maximum attention. And when you're listening, I want you to have in mind the following things. Do not pay so much attention to words that you are not familiar with. Pay attention to the ones you know, the words you know. That way you are not wasting time. Instead of writing, you're wasting time thinking about words you don't know. Any words or sentences that you couldn't grasp well while the audio is playing, just leave it and go straight to the ones that are playing at the moment, and keep writing as much as you can. An important way to take down your jottings is to divide your sheet based on the number of speakers. If it's 3 speakers, divide into 3 speakers. So when each speaker is speaking, be writing on that the space you left for that speaker, except for the ones that are monologue, that is just one person talking, like the news report. You can just keep writing and writing and writing till you get to the end. But if it's more than one person, make sure you're writing on that each person what they are saying, so that when they ask you question, you know who is saying what. Do you understand? To go into the part 1 of Celpip listening, I want you to know that this is the easiest part, and you should be aiming to score all the answers here correctly. And the reason why this part is easy is because the audios are divided into 3 sections, and they are short audios, so you don't have to remember long information. So after the audio play, a short audio play, you answer the some questions, then another one play, you answer the questions, and then the third one plays. So this part of Celpip is between 2 people, one person with a problem and the other person with solution. And the questions in this section revolve around the problem, the solution, and if the person with the problem is satisfied with the solution provided. If they are not satisfied, why? So when you're listening, be listening for these things. In the problem, try to know the main issue, what the main problem is. So questions revolve around it. Then the solutions provided. For the solution, the person with solution gives the other person options to choose from. So pay attention to and know the option that was decided on, that the person chose. And then after the problem has been fixed, be sure to know if the person, pay attention to emotions now, if the person was satisfied with the solution provided, and if they were not satisfied, why were they not satisfied? I remember I got a question on this, on the solution, and also like why on the solution choosing, and also like the reason why they were not satisfied with the solution. Okay, that's it for the Celpip listening part 1. Is actually very easy. So this is part 2 of Celpip listening, and I want you to know that this is listening to like daily conversation. It can be among friends, family, or even colleagues at work, but in an informal setting, like during their lunch break. Is an informal conversation. So unlike the previous part, the part 1, this one, the conversation is continuous. There is no break, and you'll be listening to it for like 1.5 to 2 minutes, and after that it will populate up your question. It's like, I think, 5 questions or so. So the conversation is always like a narration from the different parties, or where they are sharing their experience on something, or maybe one person is trying to make a decision on something and he's asking the other parties that he knows have experience on that thing, their opinions and downside or the benefits. Somebody wanting to make a decision on something, and when the audio start playing, try to find out what the relationship of the parties are, if it's not stated in the anywhere, and then also find out what the main topic they are trying to talk about is. So like I said, when you are jotting, jot for your keywords, each party's opinion or experience, because that's what they are kind of sharing, and the obstacle they experience and all, or the benefits they have derived from that particular thing. So try to find that, jot that down, even if you are not getting everything, because the audios goes by fast. So the question here revolves around what the main gist is, like the main topic they're talking about, and then if there is any like a meeting they plan on doing, when and they want to meet and where do they want to meet. Also, they may also mention reason for something. If they are mentioning it, pay attention to the reason. Each party's preference or opinion, like I stated earlier. The question also revolve around I think outcome or the decision taking, because whenever the other people share their opinion, the person that is asking them question will take a decision. So pay attention to the decision that they took, and then also pay attention to the emotions that each party has when they were giving their opinion or when the conversation was going on. Again, the rules that guide the other listening also guide here. Don't pay attention to words you're not familiar with, and also keep jotting down as much things as you can hear, and jot under each person's name. And when you're listening, I want you to pay attention to outdated plan, because it might be a conversation about them making a decision and they have come up with different plan, and then eventually they will scrap it and decide to go for another. So this is a trap. So look out for things like this so that you can choose the what they eventually agreed on. So make sure that you are linking each speaker to their preference or to their own experience. That's why I said make sure you are jotting under each speaker's name on your sheet, that you divide it so you don't mix them up. So and sometimes there may be a situation where different numbers are called in a particular in that audio. Pay attention that you are not mixing up the number might sound similar, but they can be for different things. So whenever a number or is being called or certain keyword, pay attention so that you make sure you are hearing when they ask you question about it, you are not mixing it up. So sometimes the relationship might not be stated and you'll be asked to figure out the relationship with that between those people. So pay attention, use context to know what is the likely relationship between the parties that are talking. So to summarize, if you're listening to the audios, pay attention to the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, and the how. Also, pay attention to understanding the meaning. Sometimes the questions are paraphrased so that they will know if you really understand what the passage is about. Manage your time well. You only have 30 seconds to answer each question, so do not waste so much time. Pay attention, abbreviate a lot when you are writing, and this is it for part 2 of Celpip listening. So let's get into Celpip listening part 3. This particular part is you listening for information, and it's always like between two people, one person trying to get information from another person, and it can be if a person making an announcement and the other person is listening to the announcement, or a person asking a particular person for direction or how to use something, just trying to gather information. It can also be in an interview kind of setting where one person is asking question and the other person is responding to the question, and you're listening to the information being provided. So the strategy here is, first, like always, listen for the main purpose of this particular section. What's the main purpose of the information? Also, they may also use a kind of sequence or steps that you have to follow to get to something. So you have to know which step comes first. So as they are stating the step, make sure you are noting them down based on which one comes first, because there is always question around this particular part. Always note down the critical details like numbers, date or something. For instance, if it's someone asking for direction, I remember during my own exam, a woman was asking a bus driver for direction to get to somewhere, and he was saying when you get to this place, he called the name of the place, you turn left, and then when you get to this place, after the second, that kind of details, you need to pay attention and in those kind of places to note down every important detail, what comes first and what follows next. If there is a specific question being asked, always note down that question. There is likely chance that a question will come out from that specific question that was asked in the audio. Also, they also ask questions to check for your understanding. They may ask you a question like, which of the following is not a requirement to do a particular thing? So pay attention to things like that. Which one is not a requirement? They always ask. Another important question that is being asked in this section is the speaker's intention. They will always ask you a question like, it's always coming out. They will always ask you a question like, what is the person asking question likely to do next? So a final tip is for you to pay attention to the introduction and the conclusion. Most times they give you the main details. They kind of summarize something or give out important details in either the introduction or the conclusion. And also anywhere that you see that they are making emphasis on a particular details, please note down that details. And again, just like the other part, while you are jotting, make sure you are abbreviating and jot as fast as you can, because your response most time depends on what you have been able to jot down. Sometimes, like, no matter how retentive your memory is, the audio here is long, so you may not be able to remember key details that were mentioned. Let's get into Celpip Listening Part 4. In this particular part, you are listening to news report, and it's usually a monologue, that is just one speaker speaking, and they are giving maybe local news or addressing a large audience or something. And what I want you to do in this part is that you take as many notes as you can regarding who, when, what, where, how. Just those key important details. Just jot as much as you can. In this part, you don't need to divide your jottings according to speakers now, because it's just one person talking. So just continue writing as much as you can. Every important details, anything you hear, keep writing. Make sure you listen to what the headline, that's the main idea, the headline of the news is. And also any opinion, maybe there is some people have different opinion, it's always occur. Any opinion that was stated there, you can note it down. They may say, oh, so person from so place said this, but just note down that particular person's opinion. Also, try to pay attention to listen for the outcome, or at the end, what's the current status of whatever the news is about. They always ask questions regarding this. The common questions in this part include what the headline is, the main report, the cause of the incident that the report is on, and the outcome of the action taken, then the outcome. The cause of the incident, the action taken, and the outcome. There is always question regarding any quotes or references that was mentioned. They may mention a particular person, like I said, and say this person said that. So there's always question there. Also, inferential questions are asked in this particular part too. So they may ask you, what do you think would happen next, or what can you determine from whatever the outcome is. So intent. A common trap in this particular section is always them in the question. They did it to me during my exam. Them giving you incorrect numbers, and then so you have to be pay attention to the numbers being mentioned. They will give you different ones in the questions and ask you to choose one. And if you didn't grab it well, you'll be a little bit confused, because they will give you numbers that are very similar in sound. Also, they also set trap for you by mixing up the cause and the effect. So when they're asking you a question, they might take cause and put it in the effect, and use the effect and put it in cause in your options. So pay attention and make sure that you're not falling into such trap. Also, negative words. Make sure that maybe after stating something, they did not use the negative words to cancel it out. outdated plan, also make sure that you are paying attention to those and abbreviate while you are jotting. So welcome to part 5 for Celpip Listening, and this part you are listening to a group discussion. It's usually between 3 or 4 people or more, but 3 or 4 people. And so what this means is that when you are jotting, you divide your jottings into 4 parts or 3 parts depending on the number. This part is really very challenging. There is always like overlapping of ideas from these various speakers, so you really need maximum attention in this part. So each speaker will always have a name. They might use their name to reference them. So when you are jotting, make sure that you write their names on each person's part, and whatever they are saying is written under their name. The first trick is to quickly identify each speaker with their voice. Like, let's say one of them is Mary, the other person is John, the other person is this, because you hear them calling each other's name. Just quickly know who is John from their voice, who is this from their voice. Then capture the key point of each of these speakers. Capture the key points of each of these speakers. If they had a change of mind, note it down too. Also, note down the area where all the speakers agree together and the area where they are in disagreement. There's always questions surrounding this. Also, pay attention to see if someone is assigned something. Sometimes they may ask somebody to do this particular thing, or also pay attention to a decision that they jointly agreed on. So the questions here always revolve around the speakers' opinions, their area of agreement and disagreement, the tone and the emotions in their speech, what the next step is likely to be, and they also ask you inferential questions. The important thing to do is that sometimes in this particular part, you may hear them talking over each other. So one person may cut in when the other person is talking. Don't panic at this point. Just follow one particular person and keep track of that person, because if you try to follow the both of them, you will lose out on both. So follow one person. Also note that in this particular section, they might change the topic of discussion while the audio is being played, so pay attention to that change. Be sure not to attribute another person's opinion to another person. It's prone to happen in this particular section. Just like other parts, abbreviate and write as fast as you can. Don't pay attention to words that you're not familiar with. Continue writing. See you in the last part of Celpip Listening. So let's get to part 6 of Celpip Listening, which is listening to viewpoints. Just like the name entails, you are listening to different people's viewpoints, and it's usually between 3 people that have different views towards something. So for this part, like always, listen for the main idea, listen to the different views, understand each person's view. So, and also the reason behind their view. For every view that a speaker have, there's always a reason behind it. So listen for that reason. And also pay attention to the attitude or the tone of the speakers. That way, there's always question around it. This particular part is quite lengthy, because it's the last part, and you have been listening for like the past 45 minutes, 50 minutes, so you might be getting tired towards this end, and that's when people begin to fumble. So I would advise that try to build your confidence using the earlier chapter. Try as much as possible to get as much mark as you can from the earlier part of the listening. That way you'll be able to make up for any pitfall or weakness that you have towards this end. There's always like high vocabulary word, because this part has to do with complex work setting, so the vocabulary is high as well. And this tells you that the whole of Celpip is about your vocabulary, like having a range and broad vocabulary. Like I said, keep building your vocabulary while you practice, and there is no penalty for you to guess. So instead of leaving a question unanswered, take a guess and pick one answer. You might be lucky and that's the correct one, but there is no penalty if it's wrong. Also, you only have 30 seconds to answer a question. So don't waste too much time trying to figure out what the answer is. If you see yourself wasting time, just take a guess so that it doesn't time you out before you are able to pick an answer. Another thing to pay attention to in self-paced listening is that you're writing and you're listening. You're listening and you're taking notes. So sometimes you might be distracted by both. So make sure you are balancing your listening. You don't get distracted writing and then forget to be listening, which is the main thing. The good thing about this part is that everybody in the hall will be listening at the same time, because that's the start of the exam and everybody starts with listening. So there is minimal distraction. That we'll be going to Celpip speaking next.